people with a ton of money and with very little money struggle with finances. Financial stressors. I would say anxiety is definitely the number one way that it kind of like goes from stress into anxiety. You've been doing this for 20, 22 years. It's not working. Something you're doing is not working. Because if you're in this like state of heightened anxiety, talking about the really crucial aspect of this, trying to work through your narrative, trying to do the deep stuff, is impossible to do when your mind is elsewhere. So I always go for the actionable step first.
Hi, and welcome to In Conversation with Siebert, where we dive into real, honest conversations with experts about things that actually matter. This month is May, and it's Mental Health Awareness Month. So today we're exploring an often overlooked connection between financial stability and mental health. To help us unpack this, I am here with Gabriela Reyes.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be talking about this. It's definitely not spoken about enough. So
At all. Yeah, and we're so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
So to kick off, how long have you been a therapist, and what made you pursue this career?
Oh man, okay. Loaded question from the get-go.
I know. We're getting
let's
into
dive
it.
right in. So I have been in the mental health field for, I'm 34 now. I started working there when I was 21. So I'm 35. Oh my God. Sorry. So I've been in the field for 14 years or so, but I started off as an intake coordinator in my office. So I would like do that intake process with the patient and then help them pick a therapist. And then I want to say I've been licensed for like 6 years. And so 2 years before that, I was an intern, and a year before that was my practicum. So I would say about 8-9 years.
Yep.
And what made me want to get into it? I think I've always found the way that people work and the way that people kind of do things so differently, and how there's never two people that are the same, or that deal with a problem the same, or that kind of process emotions in the same way. I've always found that very interesting. And I think I recognize a stark difference because my parents are actors. So I was surrounded by artists my whole life, and they are very different from, what I would call regular people.
Right.
And so I think when I experienced other people outside of like my family, which is very artistically full, I was like, whoa, they really are so different. And the way they think is so different, and the way they process things, and kind of what they are and aren't okay with. And that's really what got me into it. And the study was so interesting that I just kind of hoped I would like the practice too. And thankfully I do. So
Yeah. That's so interesting. Do you find yourself with your parents or with your family being like a therapist to them as well? Meaning, I have my very best friend. She's a therapist. And so I find myself in therapy conversations with her, on just a regular Tuesday when I'm asking her about something, right, that has nothing to do with emotions. And all of a sudden, we're doing a deep dive into how this thing has made me feel and it's affected me. So I'm wondering if you feel that way kind of within your like interpersonal relationships as well.
I want to say yes and no.
Yeah.
I think that having a lot of very close, wonderful friends, like I'm so lucky. My family and friends are just spectacular. And I recognized exactly why I could never be their therapist.
Interesting.
By having these conversations with them. Because whereas like I know how I would approach a problem as a therapist, and how I could be disconnected, and how I could really not let my emotions kind of lead the way, because I do end up, I love a lot of my patients, and I care deeply about them, and I think about them and how I could help outside of the office. I really do. I think it's impossible to stay like cold and distant. Right. But with friends, it's obviously a very different relationship. And so while they do come to me a lot of the times because they know I'm a therapist and I help them work through those things, there are a lot of times where I'm like, all right, but this is like friend Gabby talking. This is not therapist Gabby. So take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Do they ever ask or request therapist Gabby? Or are they pretty, I bet.
I'll ask, like, sometimes I'll be like, all right, do you want therapist Gabby or friend Gabby? Because I can separate both right now. But sometimes I'm like, so mad at the guy that hurt them that, or a similar situation that I can't be therapist Gabby.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
so
I'm
too emotionally involved.
Yeah. Such a nice tool for you to have. And I feel like your friends and your family would probably say the same thing, because you really get like such a logistical and like research based kind of side of you. So yeah,
it's definitely been helpful.
Yeah, definitely helpful for dynamics.
Exactly.
I myself have been in and out of therapy since I was probably 15. And I say in and out because I'll do it, for a few months, maybe a few years. And then I always find myself kind of breaking away from it and then kind of finding myself back, which not necessarily the best practice. It is what it is.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
You go when you need it.
Go when I need it.
Yeah.
My biggest thing, and kind of leads me to my next question, is like the style of therapy or the approach. For me, I've noticed and learned like I need someone who's going to be really honest and like straightforward. And it's almost like the opposite of like, I don't need a listener. I need someone who's going to really like help me decide what it is I want, and kind of like navigate with me to that answer. So my question for you is, what is your style of therapy? I know there's so many different types and styles, so interested to hear what's worked for you and if that changes maybe even based on your clients.
It definitely adjusts a bit based on my clients and what it is they're going through. Mm-hmm. Like there are very specific issues and traumas and really deep-rooted, we call it trauma with a capital T, right?
Yes.
It's like the really tough one that requires me to step back a little bit. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, I am very straightforward, honest. We talk about absolutely everything. Like I was telling you earlier, I care deeply for most of my clients, right? So I am not the therapist that's going to have this like nice separation, stay very serious, not react to anything you say. Like I will gasp and, be a human in the room.
Which is so important.
Yeah. But some people don't respond well to that. Right. Some people need that disconnection. And I'm not that person's therapist. It's like everything. There's so many of us out there with so many different styles that like, I joke that it's kind of like dating. Mm-hmm. Like you have to find somebody you click with. And I think that's more important even that I'm like the best therapist in the world, right? Mm-hmm. If we don't click, it's just not going to work. You're not going to listen to anything I say. You're not going to really dive as deep as you need to. Mm-hmm. You're not going to feel like you can trust me to tell me all your deepest, darkest secrets.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So I am the therapist that's going to kind of like feel it with you sometimes and I'll tell it like it is. Mm-hmm. And I know some people need a more gentle approach. So just depends. But that is what I would say I like to do.
Yeah. I love to hear that. Sounds like you work with a lot of relationships. I know that you started a retreat. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I thought that was really interesting.
So my partner, he is awesome and poor guy. I try everything that I recommend to couples on him. So it really is tried and true.
Guinea pig.
He really is. He really is. We're getting ahead of the problems we don't have yet. So we went to a like vision board event at my friend's. She has like this huge place in Homestead here in Florida, which is kind of like a big farm, a lot of land, a lot of greenery. And we did this beautiful event where we did these vision boards in the beginning of the year. And he was like, man, babe, it would be great if you did a retreat here. And I had always like thrown around the idea of doing a retreat. And so that's where the idea was really born.
That's cool.
And I brought it into, my office is wonderful. Everybody I work with is like a family. I've been there for so long. And so I brought it to them and she's my boss, Lucy. She's like, let's make it happen. Let's do it. Let's dive in. So we started the Tough Love Retreat. And the idea was to kind of like tackle different topics that people have a tough time with and kind of guide them through it and have a day that they can dedicate to themselves. So it was like a really, really wonderful experience. We've done 3 of them. Cool. We're prepping for the 4th one now, but it was great. It's like a full day, really immersive.
Yeah.
And we do a little bit of everything. There's always movement, live music, and like 3 different talks with licensed either psychologists or therapists. So it's great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I'd
love to come to one time. It sounds like something right up my alley.
I'll send you all the info next time.
Yeah, that's so cool. And in that, do couples come or is it usually, just for themselves or both?
Both. So we did one that was specifically on like love, relationships, and dating. And so it tackled a little bit of everything. We opened it up to singles and couples just because I think most people want to be in a relationship And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think we should not frown upon anybody who's like searching for love. I think it's kind of basic to our biology. We need people. So with that in mind, it's always good to have something in the toolbox, you know, like you know how to deal with these things. And so for that specific one that was surrounding love and relationships, we had the most couples. And for every other one, we did one with trauma, which was a little heavier. We had some couples go as well. Friends, cousins, sisters, brothers, like a ton of people, moms and daughters, moms and sons came. It's great to see like just everybody coming together. So we haven't yet done just a couples retreat, but it's definitely part of the future plans.
Yeah, it sounds like it shows up kind of organically too.
Exactly.
Which is really cool. I think it's so brave to go to therapy like for yourself, but it's like that next step to bring in someone you love and work through problems together, or just have them, you know, be there to support you. I feel like that even takes, you know, even more bravery. So that's really cool to see that kind of naturally has happened with those retreats.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about finances and mental health. From your experience, how do finances commonly show up in therapy sessions?
So they show up all the time. I can't really like pin it to one area. But I will say they show up a ton with couples.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people with a ton of money and with very little money struggle with finances. Right? We're not taught enough about them. We don't know enough about them. And me personally, like there have been times where I've been dealing with a patient that's having a specific financial trouble that I've had to go home and research it because I'm like, I have no idea what this is, you know? And I'm always honest with my patients, like, I don't know enough about this. I'm going to take this week until I see you next week to kind of dive into it so I could try to help you through it. But in reality, we were talking a little bit about this before we hit record, but I think you need to get help. No matter what, if the help is available, like get it, seek the professional help, no matter in what space. So within my practice specifically, couples with financial issues, I am not equipped to help with those, right? I can help you communicate about those financial issues, but I can't guide you in what you should do or shouldn't do or where you should or shouldn't spend. Like I might make a mess, you know?
Right.
And so I am very big on go get the help. Yeah. Like you've been doing this for 20, 22 years. It's not working. You know, something you're doing is not working. So go seek that help. But to answer your question, I see it very, very often with young individuals, right? Between the age of 20 to 28 that have no idea how to deal with their finances. You know, they're like, it's their first time making money that's just theirs, where they're paying for a bunch of things and they don't know how to handle it. Yeah. And it's very anxiety inducing. It's very stressful, which is a snowball effect. It causes a plethora of issues. So I see it a ton in individuals in that way, even adults that are older, right? Yeah. The information's out there, but there's so much of it. It's so saturated, and you never know where to look if you don't know what's going on, you know? So it is very stressful. And what I usually find myself doing is like, let me help you communicate about this efficiently. Let me help you through like that anxiety that you have behind it. So the fear doesn't stop you from like facing the truth, right? Like, how in debt are you? Where are you making the mistakes? Like, those are the things that I think people avoid because it's scary to like face the reality of it. Yeah. And you're just kind of like closing your eyes and swiping your credit card.
Yeah. Ignorance is bliss sometimes, unfortunately. Exactly. In that situation.
And it stops being bliss when you get to that point of no return. And it stops being bliss when you're in a relationship with a partner who is like, I need you to do better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. When it kind of faces you head on and you have to kind of make a decision for yourself to move forward. It's interesting you said, you know, and it's not surprising, but it's just interesting that you said, you know, it comes from people who maybe don't have the resources they want, but also people who maybe have all the resources that they could have ever imagined, and there's still stress. Yeah. What is the difference in that stress? Meaning, like, is it the same? What's the difference with that? Because it's a very, I'm sure, kind of touchy and sensitive thing.
It is. Yeah. You know what's funny? there's not a lot of difference. The way that the stress shows up when it comes to finances. And I will say a lot of this stress is learned behavior. So if you grew up very poor and struggling and kind of constantly on edge about money, we take the bad habit of that stress with us into adulthood, even if we are perfectly financially stable, have a great basis and savings account, and we pay off all our debt and we have no debt and everything's wonderful, and you kind of take that stress with you sometimes. There's always that you find something to stress about. And so, to answer your question, when somebody has a ton of money and they're in a good place, there's still always something to stress about.
Right.
They will find something to worry about. They need to make more, or what they're making is not being used correctly, or their partner is using it in a way that they don't like. And so it shows up in the same way. And what I mean by that is that the stress is the same. It keeps you up at night. You're frustrated by it. It creates issues in your relationship. It creates mental and physical health issues for you. So I can't say that it's very different.
Yeah, which is so interesting. And I was almost hoping that was the answer, because it kind of relates us all in a way. And sometimes we often look to what we don't have or what we could have more of, and we think things could be so much better. The grass is always greener. If I had X, I would be happy. And it's refreshing to know that that's not necessarily the answer, and that these people actually are dealing with more or less the same type of feelings and emotions.
Yeah.
And that is comforting in a
Slightly,
weird way.
Right? Yeah.
Slightly, yeah. When financial kind of uncertainty comes up in a relationship or for really just an individual, how do you find that often manifests in the individual? I'm sure, anxiety is the first thing we think of. And I know, in present day in this society, there's a crazy, statistic of people who have anxiety, myself included. And so besides, I guess, the anxiety of money uncertainty, what else, how do those things kind of manifest in a person's personality or day to day? Yeah.
So I would say even a step before anxiety, the stress that it creates for these people, the stress that is in their day to day.
Yeah.
We know that stress raises cortisol levels, and cortisol is our stress hormone, and we need it. Cortisol is great. It helps us wake up in the morning. It gives us energy. It gets bad when, too much of everything is bad, except money, right?
Yeah.
But too much of almost everything is terrible. Yeah. So same with cortisol. And when we are exposed to high levels of stress on a daily basis, our cortisol will be through the roof, right? Mm-hmm. And that has been linked to insane physical health issues like heart disease and osteoporosis and acne and the thinning of the skin, and you bruise easily, and heart issues. Yeah. There's so much that could happen physically, but outside of that, just mental health wise, the mood changes are awful, right? Once you're stressed, when you are very anxious, you don't respond well to people. You don't react well to people. You don't approach people in the same way because you are not in a good headspace, right? Yeah. It's very difficult to think clearly. So you're not working as well. You're not functioning as well in other areas of your life, like work, for example. Right. I know that I would rather cancel clients if I have a highly stressful day because I'm not going to show up as a good therapist that day. Right. I might heighten their stress. You feed off of that. And so it's that way, I think, for everyone. You're not showing up in the best way if you're allowing this to kind of continue and not doing anything about it. Yeah. And so with financial stressors, I would say anxiety is definitely the number one way that it kind of goes from stress into anxiety. And by definition, anxiety is just an irrational fear, right? You're not going to die. There's definitely a solution. Yeah. There's definitely something that you can do to make this better. Yeah. And you're still avoiding it like the plague. You're still avoiding it like you're standing on the edge of a cliff and you're in severe danger. And so when you kind of try to work through the fact that that's not the case, right? That it's scary and it sucks and you probably are going to have to change things a little bit. You're able to face that.
Yeah.
It's helpful, but I think before you get to that point, it really genuinely feels like you're going to die, you know? Like anxiety, I don't think anybody who hasn't experienced severe anxiety doesn't really get how severe it can be. And it happens with absolutely anything. And finances is up there. It's such a huge, it can affect so much of our lives that it would be wild if we didn't respond that way, right?
Right.
It's our body's way of letting us know, like, hey, you have to do something about this. Something's wrong.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And so it's helpful in a way. I know not everybody wants to think that their anxiety is helpful, but it's letting you know that something's wrong.
Something's wrong.
And so I would say mood changes, you know, it's going to affect your interpersonal relationships. It's going to affect the way you work. And bottom line is you're going to be anxious, you know.
Yeah.
You're going to be stressed out. You're going to lose sleep.
Yeah.
Which creates a whole plethora of other issues.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like the domino effect.
Exactly.
And so kind of, I think the first step, and just speaking from like personal experience, is like identifying that it's anxiety is like, you know, that does wonders for me, at least when I'm in one of those headspaces that I'm just kind of crashing down all at once. It's just like acknowledging the fact that it's anxiety. I've had this once before and I'm going to have it again and I'm going to be okay. Right.
Exactly.
And I think that's like such a small tool that I've learned in therapy, but it's really, really has helped me in a profound way.
Yeah.
Right. To just kind of sit with that and actually make sure you tell yourself it's okay also.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Like you're not alone in this.
Yeah.
It's all right. And reminding yourself that anxiety is there for a reason.
Yeah.
That there's a reason it's showing up. And it really is just letting you know there's something to work on. And once you recognize that, like you were saying, I think people have a tough time, you know, saying that they're anxious. There's like one extreme or the other, right? Like I'm anxious and this is who I am. And it's like a badge that they wear proudly, or the other extreme that's like, no, I'm not anxious. I'm fine.
Totally.
And you're like, can't sleep, breaking out all the time, like treating everyone like crap. And you can't pinpoint it. So I would definitely say that you're right. That first step is so important. Just like recognizing like, hey, this is an issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What type of tools? I know, like, you know, having a toolkit is always brought up in therapy.
Yeah.
You know, it's so important to have a toolkit that works for you, and to build that toolkit along the way, whether it's through therapy or just growing and evolving. What type of tools do you think are really important for people who are facing kind of like money, anxiety, financial stress, around those? I think the first thing would be like fixing the problem, which we've talked about, or maybe that's the last thing. But what are some tools that you would suggest for those facing issues in those aspects?
Yeah. So I would say being informed, like within therapy, we would call it like psychoeducation, right? Okay. Understanding what it is that's going on is the first step always, right? Having to be able to grasp like, hey, this is exactly what the issue is. That is life-changing in and of itself, right? So I would say the first step is understanding what it is that's going on. What's causing you stress, what the issue is, you know, whether you're avoidant or you're diving way too deep into it without any help, you know. And then that leads me to my second point, which is get the help.
Yeah.
Right? Do your research. It's literally at our fingertips. Yeah. Which is the craziest part, right? There's so much information out there. There are so many little tools, like these like preset Excel sheets that help you like break things down, that help you understand like how you're spending, where you're spending. And there are people everywhere that can sit with you and help, you know, that can sit with you and kind of guide you in the right way. Ask your friends, ask your family members that like kind of have their stuff together and that you look up to in that sense. I think people are embarrassed, especially when it comes to financial issues, to admit that they have an issue. And it's understandable, right? There is a lot of shame around that. And people really glorify having a lot of money and like being financially stable, but it's difficult. And we talked about in the very beginning how there's not enough information on it at all. Like, we really are not given a good tool belt, like you were saying, from a young age. We know math, kind of, period. Like, that's where it ends,
Full
you know?
stop.
Exactly. And unless you study it, which I'm terrible at math, and I studied psychology in part because there's 2 math classes and then I never have to look at it again. And so with people like me, I really, really had to go out there. And I can tell you, like, from personal experience, like, I spoke to someone, I did all the research. And so with someone in my office, if they come in and they're like, I am absolutely going crazy and stressed out about my finances, the first thing I would suggest that they do is go talk to someone.
Yeah.
Go talk to someone. I have, like, let's look it up together, right? Like, let's jump on Google right now and see, like, what can be done. Let's call a few places. Like, that's your homework. Call these 5 places that we found today, you know, see what they offer, see what the next steps are. I think one thing that eases anxiety a lot is taking that first actionable step, right? Like, you call people, you set an appointment, and you're already like, oh, okay, I feel so much better, and nothing has changed, you know?
You can take a breath almost.
Exactly. So I would say that is always my first step. It's very different when it comes to finances, because sometimes anxiety isn't that easy to kind of work through. There's something far more deep-rooted and difficult to sift through. And when it comes to finances, the tool belt can be extensive. You know, it's the access to the help is very manageable. It's very doable. It's very present. So I would say when it comes to that, that's the first thing.
Yeah.
And that alone, I think, once you're getting the help, we can work through changing your narrative around financial issues and money. I think that's a huge one. No matter how much money you have, if you're telling yourself that you're in trouble, that it could all be taken away from you tomorrow, if you're, like, teaching yourself this fear on a constant basis, you could be wealthy and very stable and happy, and you're still going to be freaking out about it constantly. So I think the second step would be that, just working on accepting that you're in a good place and enjoying that space and being proud of yourself, and, like, just shifting your narrative a little bit, being kinder to yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think, like, what I got from that too is, like, we have so many resources in life, and often it's just finding those right resources. And I think, you know, in today's world with, you know, the internet and everything that comes with, it's almost like information overflow. You know, there's just too much. And so often people, I'm sure, feel paralyzed because they don't know where to turn, because there's just so much information out there. So I think it's really insightful to just allow people to just take that first step and to just start doing that research and to start using their resources, whether it's their network, whether it's their friends, whether it's their family. Just making that, like, first step is really crucial.
And sometimes we'll like sit down in my office on the floor, because I know how overwhelming that can be. You know, I know how it really is information overload, and not all of it is good information. Kind of like the information out there about mental health. Like, sometimes I am scrolling through Instagram or TikTok and I am cringing at what people are saying, right? And how it's like being glorified to avoid anything that makes you anxious. Like, I can't do that. I'm anxious about it, you know? And I'm like, no, like, that's the worst thing you can do. And so it's similar in this case, where I will sit, like, crisscross applesauce next to my patient on the floor on my coffee table with my laptop. And I'm like, let's find this together, right? Like, let's do a little research. Let's write things down together, and let's make some phone calls. And so I think, again, the support in that space is really, really helpful. And I have also been in therapy forever and ever. I'm obsessed. I've been in and out of it also, just with the same therapist, because I love her. And so I go back to her kind of like as needed. I joke that it's kind of like a mechanic. And so her support through all of the issues I've had has been crucial, has been so helpful.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm so big on just having that support, because you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
There's so much information out there.
There is.
And just like there's like crappy financial advisors, there's wonderful ones that, you know, sometimes the crappy ones ruin it for everyone.
Right.
And so it's kind of trying to keep that in mind. Like, there are good ones out there.
Yeah.
There are good therapists out there. If you have 3 crappy experiences, you know, they won't all be like that. So
yeah,
it's difficult to think of that once you have that one bad experience, to kind of try to stay positive and recognize that this was a bad experience, not like a bad life.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is easy to do too.
Exactly. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard not to
It is
be
hard.
like,
It is hard.
everything's terrible.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
All right. So kind of finishing up with our financial talk, and you kind of answered this, but I wanted to kind of hear it from you again. What would you say to someone who feels overwhelmed by both their financial situation and their mental health, and where should they start?
Okay. So I would say, for sure, take an actionable step.
Yep.
That's number one. That's going to make you feel better about your financial situation, and it's going to make you feel better mentally also. Actionable steps is always my like first step. I always joke that you have to break the surface and then you get to like the deep stuff, because if you're in this like state of heightened anxiety, talking about the really crucial aspect of this, trying to work through your narrative, trying to do the deep stuff, is impossible to do when your mind is elsewhere. So I always go for the actionable step first. And so that's what I would say. Take that actionable step first. You know, your therapist can help you with that. Don't be scared to ask, like, hey, can we sit down and do this together? Or sit with a friend who's like super organized. Like, hey, will you sit with me today and like help me go through this?
Yeah.
Someone you don't feel, you know, that's going to embarrass you or shame you.
Right.
And just dive into it with someone and take that first step, make a few phone calls. And then I would say work on your narrative. I don't think there's a single patient that I've seen that hasn't been something I've worked on. We're not nice to ourselves. We are not nice at all. Half of the time, like, you drop something on the floor, what do you say to yourself in your head? I bet it's not kind. Exactly. Like, that was so stupid, you know?
Right.
And so working on shifting your narrative to, I am perfectly capable of handling this issue. A grown-up that has lived her whole life and made it through everything and is on the other side of all the crappy things she went through. And I'm perfectly capable of handling some financial issues. I'm perfectly capable of like sifting through this and figuring out a way out. And no matter how long it takes, we'll get out of it.
Right.
And so that mental shift alone is such a game changer.
I really like that. What you say, shifting your narrative. Can you talk more about that?
Sure. I'm actually creating a program right now that I'm so excited about, an online program, because I just feel like 1 hour a week of therapy is not enough to shift your narrative. Like, you have to put in daily work. And so narrative is one thing that there has been an insane amount of studies on how self-esteem and the way that you talk about yourself, think about yourself, affects everything.
Yeah.
The way you perform at work, again, the way you approach relationships and dating. And so your narrative is one of the biggest parts of that. And just, there's this bundle of nerves in our brain. It's called your reticular activating system. And I hope everyone who's listening Googles this, because it is really just like mind blowing. So this bundle of nerves in your brain, it's responsible for what we focus on. So in its simplest form, it's responsible for like, I love the Mercedes G-Wagon. I think about it often. And so I will spot it in the street constantly. It's everywhere. And there aren't any more Mercedes G-Wagons in the street.
Right.
My reticular activating system is just making me focus on them because I think about it often. Same with like if you're in a crowded room and there's 17 conversations going on, but you're really focused on your conversation. But if somebody says your name, like you hear Gabby in the other side of the room, suddenly you're clicked into that because that's a name you know and recognize. It's often in your head. And so in the same way, if you're constantly telling yourself, or like you spill some coffee this morning on your beautiful white blouse, and you're like, my day is ruined, everything else is going to shit, you will focus on the crappy parts of your day. And so in the same way, if you're like, this coffee is not going to ruin my day, I'm going to put an even cuter top on, and I am going to have the best day ever. And you will focus on the good parts of your day. So that is how like crucial and important your narrative is, that it literally dictates how you perceive your life.
Right.
And so I think it's critical for people to work on that in every aspect. And financial is up there. You know, if you're constantly telling yourself that it's not good enough, that, you know, you could lose it all, you'll focus on the bad. Yeah. And you might not have clarity to do the good if you don't see it. Right? If you can't like pinpoint it or pick it out.
Right. Or if you're not looking for it. You're so consumed with the bad.
Exactly. And it's just the way our brains work. Like it's not our fault. We can't help it. Like our brain is dedicated to doing that.
Right. I know something I've learned in therapy is you are not your thoughts. Which like that was such a huge unlock for me, because I think no one tells you that, you know, in my thoughts, when they are negative, I believe them, right? Yeah. Because it's my internal monologue. And for me, it's like, you know, what guides me. And so hearing that was such a huge unlock in my journey of just knowing that they're just thoughts and you can take them, you can, you know, let them go, but they're not you. They don't, you know, they're not Lacey.
And they don't come from Lacey.
Right.
You learned to think that way somewhere along the way. Somebody taught you, a situation taught you.
Right.
And so it's another habit that you have of speaking to yourself a certain way. And so these thoughts that pop up, I joke, like, don't claim them. They're not yours, you know?
Right.
You can decide what you think about them after. But that first initial thought that pops into your mind, that's not your thought.
Yeah.
You learned that somewhere and it popped up for you.
Right.
You can choose to change it. Like, no, I don't really believe that.
Yeah.
And adjust.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Gabrielle.
Of course,
this was really so insightful. Great. Where can our listeners find you? Share your social media channels.
Yes. So I am Mindful G-E-E, on both Instagram and TikTok. And I work out of Coral Gables in my private practice. It's Coral Gables Counseling Center, like you mentioned. And you can find me in any of those. DM me. I'm happy to talk to anyone and kind of guide you in the right way.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
If you're feeling the weight of financial stress, remember you're not alone. Help is out there. At Siebert, we believe that financial freedom is a key part of overall wellness, and we're happy to support you. Whether you're just starting out, planning your future, or navigating complex decisions, our team of financial professionals is here to provide guidance along your journey. Visit Siebert.com to explore how today. Thank you.